You're here,
What's
man.
up? Great to
Great
be
to meet
here.
you. Yeah, great to meet you. We have only 29 minutes, so I definitely want to get the most out of it as I possibly
Uh-oh.
can. I have personally been following your YouTube channel for, geez, at least a year now. So I love what you do. I think your enthusiasm for business, for Tesla, for electric cars is infectious. Keep it up. I'm really excited about our conversation today. For those that don't know you, could you give us a 10-second introduction on yourself?
Totally. Yeah. My name is Gally. I run a YouTube channel called Hyperchange, which basically talks about all the companies I'm investing in and technologies that I think are changing the world for the better, making us more sustainable, and just sort of documenting my journey about following and investing in those companies. And obviously, Tesla is like my biggest obsession in that lens. And so that's the company I make the most content about.
Correct. And you have been going to Tesla events for quite some time. And I believe you were at Battery Day. Is that correct?
Yep, I was at Battery Day. I even got the investor tour of the actual cell production line at Battery Day. It was my fourth year of going to the Tesla shareholder meeting in a row. I think that might be a record. I don't know.
That's fun. So the next half an hour, fools, is all about Gally's takeaways from Battery Day. We're going to pick his brain, get your questions in there. We're just going to ping through. So I just want really maybe a 1 minute overview from you. What are your big takeaways from Battery Day? What did you see there that made you the most excited?
Yep. I think this was really an event for long-term investors, and I love how Tesla has really changed their communication strategy to focus on the technology they're building because that's really the value from a long-term investor standpoint. It's not what's on the earnings or income statement today, but it's about my research isn't focused on the financial statements, but it's focused on the technology they're developing, which will create amazing financial statements 10 years from now. And so that's really what this was about was Tesla moving one step, or actually many steps further to vertically integrate into the battery supply chain, which is their biggest constraint on growth thus far. I mean, Tesla's my favorite problem for my investments to have is if they can't sell enough of their product. That's their biggest problem is like too many people want their thing, they can't make enough of it. If that's their core fundamental issue, we have got this is awesome. And so that is Tesla's core issue. They literally can't build enough cars. Too many, there's 700 people, 100,000 people who want the Cybertruck, everybody's running the Semi. And so it's all about how do we build enough batteries for millions of these cars that people want. And the way to do that is to bring that production in-house and literally just forcefully scale this supply chain because the battery supply chain wasn't built to build 10 million cars. And so it was all about this division and technology about how to scale that battery supply chain.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And maybe I should back up for 1 second, Callie. Callie, I'm Brian Feroldi. I'm a writer for Fool.com. I have been an investor in Tesla since 2013. I've been
Oh,
following
awesome.
them, and they're one of my favorite companies to follow. The Motley Fool, one of the things we love is Motley, a diverse set of viewpoints. There is no company line on anything. There are big bulls at the Motley Fool, including myself. We also have a fair number of big bears at the on Tesla. That diversity of views is something that we celebrate. And something that surprised me from Battery Day, I know this probably didn't come as a shock to you. Overall, the media takeaway from Battery Day seemed to be almost one of letdown. Was there anything, let me just start with that. You are somebody who's followed Tesla for a long time. Is there anything from Battery Day that they didn't announce that surprised you, or were there any negative surprises to you from Battery Day?
Yeah, I think that says a lot more about the media than it says about Tesla, frankly, because if you talk to anyone in the industry about what they announced, they're really blown away. I mean, the thing that I wasn't expecting was not only did they go into vertically building their own battery cells, which is kind of what people were expecting, but they're actually going into cathode production. Every single other cathode is getting produced in China, this crazy raw materials supply chain that's actually really sort of intensive from a fossil fuel standpoint for transporting all of these rocks. And so Tesla, by bringing this into the US on site cathode production and even potentially mining production, they bought this lithium clay mine in Nevada. I did not expect those two pieces of the vertical supply chain. So Tesla even did more than I was actually expecting in terms of vertical integration here. And although a lot of it's, down the road, it takes years to do this. That was really, really exciting for me.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, I follow a number of YouTube channels on itself. Many of them, I mean, I was personally surprised that they didn't announce the million-mile battery. I thought that was like a shoe-in. I'd also heard some potential about some logical things about they're going to announce that the vehicles are going to be plugged into the grid to create a virtual power plant. So those things were something that I was expecting to hear, but I didn't. The one thing that blew me away was this picture here, and I do have a couple of pictures from the event, and it's really just the overview of their technology. They're saying that they're going to get a 56% reduction in the cost of the battery technology, not from one innovation, but from a series of innovations that are going to stack up on each other. You got a chance to tour the plant. You got to hear a chance to kind of hear it in more detail. Anything when you saw the tour of the plant that made you say that's too aggressive, or do you take them at their word that this is the thing they've laid out, and could they even be potentially being conservative in the numbers they've given?
You know, it'd be crazy if they were conservative because they said they're going to hit 100 gigawatt hours in 2022 production rate of this in-house built cell, which would be about triple the rate of today. So if you think about that, they're already building 500,000 cars, going to do 30 billion in revenue with that battery output. Now they're tripling that battery output just from their in-house produced cell by 2022. I think that's insane if they can actually hit that off. Like, that blows my mind. And I think they were partially downplaying a lot of the impact this could have on new products because they don't want an Osborne effect. But I'm also curious, you know, is that a realistic ramp? That sounds insane. You know, Tesla's been optimistic with some timelines before, but they've also been, you know, actually really on point with other timelines, especially with battery production. The Gigafactory was supposed to be doing 500,000 cars a year in 2020. When they built it in 2014, that's exactly on track. Model Y ended up being 2 quarters early. So a lot of this stuff about Tesla missing their timelines, I'm actually not seeing. Recently, Tesla's been really on point with their timelines. And so that almost freaks me out of like, you know, this has been probably 5 years in the works in super stealth mode R&D of them working on this. This isn't like they just did it today. And my biggest takeaway from that battery cell production line is these things are just flying out like bullets, just, and there's just freshly baked battery tray after freshly baked battery tray. I mean, this is not an experiment anymore. They are cranking out a ton of these cells, or at least practicing.
Yeah. One of my favorite kind of follow-on videos from Battery Day was an interview I saw with Sandy Munro. And I think people that are following the industry know that Sandy Munro has been, rightfully so, critical of Tesla. I mean, his teardown that he did of the Model 3, he basically said, this thing needs so much work. There's so much to be done. He couldn't contain his enthusiasm at post-Battery Day. He basically came out and said, ICE vehicles are in a tremendous amount of trouble. And I view him as a credible resource given his history of kind of talking down and downplaying Tesla. He is not a Tesla cheerleader, but his reaction to Battery Day was, from the engineering perspective, was like, wow, that spoke volumes to me. Was there any similar takeaway from you, or are there any other third-party validations that you've seen that have really amped up your enthusiasm for the Battery Day?
And it's funny because even Sandy Munro is actually almost like a lagging indicator because he was so skeptical of Tesla. And the only thing he got wrong was how much Tesla would dominate. So if anything, he almost downplays how disruptive Tesla is. And I actually just did an interview with him that I'm going to post on my channel about talking about Battery Day, recapping this. And I mean, that's what I'm saying about the people in the industry who understand this technology and understand what Tesla announced. The closer you are to the industry, the more impressed you are. And I mean, to me, it blows my mind. Tesla, you know, they were barely building cars. 10 years ago, and you fast forward, they figured out how to build cars with robots better than everyone else, pumping out 25% gross margin. You know, Sandy Munro said the body panel gap sucked at the Model 3, Model Y, they're amazing, this rate of improvement. Now to see them take the battery production side of this in-house, I mean, it's just blowing my mind to see how fast they're moving and just vertically integrating. Like it's like they're literally moving like 10 times faster than everyone in this industry.
Something that I was both surprised at and also not surprised at, and it almost was like overlooked for people that got at Battery Day. Tesla basically announced that it's getting into the mining business, and that it's created this brand new way to mine, was it lithium or silicon, one of the two. And that to me is just like, this company is endlessly innovative and really is doing everything they can to become extremely vertically integrated. Did you get any more information about that while you were there, or is that something that you think is going to be a long-term competitive advantage for the company? Any insights on that?
I mean, I love the outside the box thinking they're doing. And this is actually this clay sort of extraction technology has been sort of a new sort of R&D kind of, there's like a bunch of projects around the world trying to use a sort of similar approach. So it sounds like a cutting edge new type of lithium mining technology that Tesla obviously thinks is very promising. And so they want to start dabbling in. So I think that's awesome. And I mean, just the ingenuity, the kind of like, nothing is too big of a problem to tackle, I just think is so fascinating here. And I think that's really what the cool takeaway is. It wasn't really one innovation or this cell or they're getting into mining. It was like, this is really a battery skunk works that they have launched. It's an R&D powerhouse to really look at all facets, like a kind of systems approach of how that battery supply chain works and how we can, piece by piece, that 56% cost improvement is just looking from a first principle standpoint of each piece of this supply chain and how we can sort of, improve it on all aspects.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question because they mentioned this in the presentation and it seemed to be a really big deal, but they didn't go into too much detail about it. I completely understand that Tesla can't divulge all of its secrets, right? And doing so would be kind of silly. One of the things that they basically said was, silicon is super abundant. It should have been used in battery technology for years, but it expands. And they just basically said, we have this polymer that we put over and poof, solved. It solves the problem. Did you get any more insight into that? Because that seems like a major breakthrough. And they just kind of were like, yep, we solved it. And did you see anything more about that behind the scenes?
No, and this is a little over my head, honestly. I know they've been trying to increase the amount of silicon in the anode for a long time, and there are a lot of companies successfully doing that. So it's like, once again, with the clay kind of mining thing, it's like, this is kind of when in that industry, the anode cutting edge stuff is going to silicon already, but they're kind of working on almost commercializing, almost getting it right. And it feels like that's the level of where a lot of these announcements were. We're really pushing that boundary of what's possible, commercializing this next incremental level of all of these technologies. And you stack that up, and what do we get? We get a battery, my Model Y is already going 300 miles. It's an amazing car competing in class. But if we get that one incremental improvement in this battery technology one step further, it's really easy to just thoughtfully see how, wow, of course, these ICE cars don't have a chance. The specs are already competitive. We get that one bump that all these improvements are showing. But I wish I could tell you more about that silicon polymer secret sauce.
Yeah,
I'm not that nerdy, honestly.
Yeah, it seems amazing. Just while we're on that, did you get to see the new stamping press by chance? I know that is again, Sandy is like, this is a major innovation, but it's something that it seems to really have the potential to lower their cost per car dramatically. So that would be so cool to see that thing in action.
Yeah, it would be so cool. And I thought it was really fascinating how they showed the cell to pack thing. That was another big improvement, is the battery cell is a structural component of the car. And this is very different. And this allowed them to remove a lot of excess space. And so I thought that was another crazy innovation of back to that systems approach, not just the battery cell, what we do with the battery cell, the chemistries in the battery cell, the shape of the battery cell, but how that shape of the battery cell impacts the shape of the car. And I even heard in Berlin, they're planning some crazy 8-piece mega, even taking this casting thing to one more level. And it's even you talk about Tesla and rocket science technology, they developed their own aluminum alloy that doesn't need to be treated in a special way that can handle this massive press. So, I mean, the layers of innovation here is insane.
I think that's an overlooked advantage that Tesla has had this entire time. Elon Musk is the CEO of two companies, one of which is SpaceX, which almost gets universal praise or a lot more praise from people, I think in a large part because it's not public and people just see the incredible technologies come out and they're like, wow, this is amazing. But Elon has access to SpaceX engineers. And he has all along, and he can do things like create new alloys that, again, are used in the car. And again, I think that's just an overlooked advantage of the company. I want to switch gears real quickly for you and talk about this picture here. This was an interesting picture that came out that talked about the different cathode materials and how they're going to apply to the different products that Tesla is going to make. They glossed over this in the presentation, or at least they went fast, and I understand why. But this car that is underneath that is hidden here, Elon later said this is going to be a $25,000 car with autonomy. Autonomy.
Yeah, they're not saying you're going to get the autonomous software with it. It'll have the autonomous hardware. You're going to have to pay 25 grand more if you want it to drive itself, for sure.
Okay.
Because I noticed a lot of the media, and it's not they weren't trying to say it's going to be autonomy too, but I just wanted to clear that up. But yeah.
Oh, please do. That was the confusion. So he was saying what he meant to say, or the interpretation that he gave, was a $25,000 car with the hardware built in, but not because now autonomy costs $8,000 or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And for Tesla fans, I mean, this is in line with what the game plan's been from day one. The Model 3, we're starting at that 35 to like 38 for Model 3 and Y, but then you got to pay, the 8,000 autonomy, you can get your features, but the next class of that is bringing that starting price down to 25, and then you'll have your features and whatever, but it's really that incremental step down in the base price that will get them even below that luxury segment into that mass market segment. And then you take into account the savings of ownership, of decreased, it's way cheaper to charge it up than oil. That $25,000 Tesla is really comparable to an $18,000 or $19,000 ICE car, regardless about, that ICE car is not going to have autonomy. But then if you want, you can pay 25 grand to get autonomy, and maybe it's a $50,000 or $60,000 total car that can drive itself around and generate hundreds of thousands of revenue per year. It's going to be this crazy product. But the other key thing on that chart that I think is a lot of people, I'll just jump into which if Tesla's going to make that sell for that $25,000 car, because that's something a lot of people were questioning. And I actually just got off the phone with Tesla's investor relations, kind of trying to clarify this for you guys and for my own knowledge. But like, Tesla wants to do all their battery cells in-house, and I know they get iron phosphate cells from CATL for their cars in China. And so some people are like, oh, are they going to use these third-party cells for the Model 2? But no, I think it is going to be the 4680, and they will build it with that iron cathode. They're going to start the 4680 cell with nickel, higher expensive for the semi-truck and Cybertruck. But over time, fast forward to 2023, 2024, they're going to be using that 4680 cell with the nickel manganese, with the nickel, and with the iron, just like that slide you showed for their different products. But I think they're just going to start with Plaid Model S, the first cars that are getting these batteries, and that's coming out of the Fremont production line, maybe Roadster, and then what the real magic is they're going to take all of these learnings from this trial battery line and build them as part of that Austin factory for the semi and Cybertruck. And that'll be where the rubber meets the road. And we're like, all right, like, let's see how good these batteries are. Let's see how many you can build. It's totally new.
Yeah, that's great color. And what you just said there, I mean, again, Tesla shareholder, Tesla bull. My immediate thought was, if I was on the fence of buying a Model 3, and I now know in 3 years' time there's a $25,000 Tesla waiting in the wing with full autonomy, why on earth would I pay 60 or 70 grand today? So if what you said is accurate, and I have no doubt that it is, that the car will cost 25, but if you want autonomy, it's going to be money on top of that. That's a message that, again, even me as a bull that watched the entire thing did not get. So there needs to be some education to educate the market after that to stop the Osborne effect. That's a major question that I had as a takeaway from there. So do you think, I mean, what should Tesla do as follow-up to make sure that people aren't confused like I was?
Yeah, and I'm like, maybe I'm a little guilty for this too, because I put that in my video, like the 25K Tesla. I don't know. I don't think it's a big deal at the end of the day. I think it's kind of a new thing. No other car comes with a brain that can actually drive itself that people actually care about. Like, yeah, you can talk about GM Super Cruise and Cadillac Super Cruise and Subaru's cruise control, but nobody cares about it. Nobody's getting pumped at it. Nobody's paying an extra 8 grand per car for that. Tesla's the only company on the planet that's introduced this new software brain that people actually are dying to get. The attachment rate's like 30 to 40% or something, and it's only going to go up and up in price. And so this is a very new thing for the entire automotive industry. It's why Tesla's gross margins are going to be structurally so much higher than every automaker we've seen in history. That's why their valuation makes no sense to traditional analysts, because they don't get this. And I think that's it. And this is all a symptom of, like, the media and Tesla trying to communicate this new thing. They're like, yo, we got the car to 25K, and and they're all excited about that from the hardware perspective, and they don't realize that people are getting confused about the autopilot. But, at the end of the day, I think it's just a symptom of how new and disruptive Tesla is, and the car is becoming a computer on wheels, and the software brain of the car is worth just as much as the nuts and bolts in the steel.
That's an important point there. Can you drill down on that for like 2 seconds? You just said you think that the gross margin is going to grow over time. I've also heard that that argument from other people. Can you dig into the why behind you think that that's going to happen?
Oh, I mean, so it already has happened. I mean, if you look at the commentary for David Einhorn, when I was talking to him 2 years ago, there's no way Tesla can hit 25% gross margin at this price point. So they've dropped the price of their car. The word used to be, oh, when Tesla comes out their $40,000 car, no way they can make money. And so what's happened now is they've actually made money for 4 quarters in a row, like, with all of those cars. And so, and this is just starting the incremental gross margin expansion. So now you have that price stabilizing, and actually FSD's been ticking up 6,000 to 7,000 to 8,000. And, what's happening here, I think, is you're going to get incremental gross margin expansion before full autonomy. So when full autonomy hits, yeah, it'll be worth 30K, and you're like, oh, that's 3 or 4 years down the road. It's going to take forever. But in between them, we're getting 8,000 to 9,000 to 10,000 for that software package, and the attachment rate staying fixed. And so Tesla, to download that new software to each car, the incremental cost is super duper low. And on a typical $50,000 car, you're only making 10,000 in profit or 12,000 in profit. So if I make another 8,000 in profit on a software package, I've doubled my margins. And so, and as that software package goes up to 8 to 12 to 50, you know, and I made videos about why this is going to go up as they release more features. This is a whole thing you can, you know, discuss. The $1 billion in deferred revenue on the balance sheet to wait for these features to roll out. But it's kind of this idea that as they charge more for the software package, as more people buy it, there's this chunk of ultra high margin revenue as a part of their vehicle that really changes the equation for thinking about, okay, maybe Tesla could hit 30, 35% gross margin structurally long term. This looks a lot more like Apple than Ford. Then all of a sudden this price sales ratio starts to make sense. All of a sudden we're looking at the cash flow, we're looking at the debt to revenue. You're like, this is not a car company. You know, this is way more like Apple, direct to consumer with inventory, with supply chain. Yeah, they have way more factories and it's more CapEx intensive, but this is a lot more like a product tech company than it is like a traditional automaker. So, yeah.
I agree with you. I agree with you there. People have been calling us a car company all along. I remember an interview I heard with Elon 6-7 years ago when he said, people think Tesla is a car company. Tesla is a hardcore engineering company that is currently focused on cars. I've always kept that in my mind about when I think about Tesla. Now, at Battery Day, they went into a lot of details about the batteries for the cars. Elon has long said that he thinks the energy portion of the business, which is currently sub 10% of revenue or so, he thinks that will eventually rival. Did they give you any insights, extra insights there about how they're going to apply this technology to Powerwall, to PowerPack, to Megapack, et cetera?
Yeah, so they didn't focus too much on the energy and grid side. And I think it's just because they're just doing so much with vehicles and the opportunity is so big there that that's where the focus is. But then if you look at the kind of atomic unit of Tesla and like their core technology, it all goes back to that battery cell. Like that's the same kind of battery cell that they're going to eventually be putting in all their energy storage products. So all these improvements in making the battery more sustainable, easier to produce, cheaper, more reliable, more efficient, all of those things are going to work their way back to the grid business. And what it means is if your Powerwall costs $6,000 right now and only stores this much energy, now it's going to cost $4,000 and store twice as much or whatever eventually. And so I think we've, like Tesla to me, if I, what I think is actually going on is they have like a stack of 50 projects of all these people who want batteries and they just like can't even get to it because they're literally just giving all their batteries to Model Y and Cybertruck and thing, and they want to scale their car business to 100 billion to 200 billion, and that is just on the table waiting to be tackled from a $25 billion company. Then, and like I said, their biggest constraint is their battery, and once they do that, then I think we're going to start to see them focus. And I just think it's kind of Elon's like Tesla's culture of getting pumped and excited on the next thing. And like investors shouldn't like wait for that energy business to give them value right now, but they should start to think in 25 as this automotive business matures, where does this next leg of growth come in? Where does all this hard work on the engineering and battery side, where does that value, the next phase of that value being realized? It's on the grid. And, you know, you think about if we have 1 million electric vehicles driving around today, what if we have 50 million? We're going to need a lot more grid stability. Need a lot more renewable energy. The grid's going to need a lot of work to be able to sustain this influx of new massive batteries and power draw, essentially. And so I think it's going to take decades to really reinvent the grid. Actually, I have one more piece on this rant really quickly. The solar roof, I think this is so exciting. Like, to just think about the opportunity of Tesla, like go on the street and walk around. Every car's not electric. You're like, okay, that could be a Tesla, that could be a Tesla. And then you go look at the roofs of the houses and you're like, these guys are all paying a couple $100 a month to draw energy from some central grid. And I'm literally looking at the sun hitting their roof and they're not doing anything about it. And then they're plugging their Tesla in half the time to that same grid. And so I just think this really simple opportunity of go outside and look at how much energy is hitting our cities that we're not collecting. Tesla's been refining the roof technology, and the solar panels commoditized, but the ability to install that quickly and productize that install and make sure we capture all this energy that's hitting us that we're not using. I think that's just such a huge sort of new white space opportunity. A roof is going to cost 50 grand. That's as much as a Model 3. I mean, this is going to be a really big business too, but I just think it's just all down the road, and that's why they didn't focus on it.
Yeah, that will be something that I'm really excited about, especially now that they have transitioned to their differentiated selling model. I can tell you that I have solar panels on my roof, and 3 years ago when I was researching them, I put my bid out to Tesla. Tesla was one of the highest of all those that I have. from what I see now, and their new model to selling, where they're basically small, medium, large, choose your own adventure, where they're in one day and get it out. Now through that, they might be the low-cost producer by far, and their marketing advantage can definitely help them do that. So I am personally interested to see if that transition pays off. One last question before we go to Q&A, because we only have a couple of minutes left. You've been studying this company for a long time. What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about Elon Musk?
That he is a billionaire, entrepreneur, or some just rich business guy. This dude is just the coolest, chillest, smartest, down-to-earth nerd. He is just a hardcore engineer nerd who is in it for the right reasons, who doesn't give a shit about money, who literally just loves, and he just engineers all day. He loves building rockets, building cars, making things that make him excited about the future. And then that's why he has this huge passionate following, because I get up every day and I love my Tesla. It brings the biggest smile to my face every day. When I see it, it's running on clean energy. The fact that we're shooting these rockets up, Starlink might come out. Like, I just think that's the biggest misconception, is that like deep down, it's just a nerdy, technological kind of amazing moment of science and engineering, and one of the greatest inventors of all time in humanity, literally in real time, inventing all this awesome stuff we get to use. And I think that's just what's happening, and that gets a lot of that gets lost.
Yeah, and I think just by the nature of the businesses that he's chosen to be in, he gets a lot of political ire from people, not to mention the fact that automakers have been historically terrible investments, and he has, if you could go back in time and buy Tesla at the IPO, you are now up, I don't even know how many times in value, but boy, did you have to endure a lot of pain along the way to get that. So yeah, to me, Elon was already rich, and he bet everything on Tesla and SpaceX. So I think the fact that he is in it for the mission just rings true to people that believe in him and want to see his company succeed. I think that is such an undervalued asset, is the people that he has, the evangelists really that he has cultivated, is such a big advantage for the company.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like for every single cell in those Wall Street spreadsheets, not one of them mentions the why behind the company, which is why every investor and customer love their products. And that's the secret sauce that has been their competitive advantage, and why nobody gets it. And it's, but yeah.
I agree with you. You're preaching to the choir there. Gally, Kalpana wants to know, what technology stocks do you own besides Tesla?
So I just wrote my biggest check into SpaceX, and Arcimoto. I love their two-wheel electric safest motorcycle. But honestly, Tesla is my biggest investment by far.
How did you become an investor in SpaceX?
I had to set up like 3 different companies and grind for 6 months. And it was the most difficult thing I've ever done, but totally worth it.
Cool. That's interesting to know. M. Bivy says, I wonder if Tesla will have autonomous features to be used as a pay-as-you-go. Do you think that could be an option, where instead of plunking down $6,000-$7,000 up front, you could say, I want to autonomous on this drive and use it temporarily?
Yep. And everyone's been begging them about a monthly autopilot subscription. I know they're working on it, so that'll probably come eventually. Wow,
that would change the revenue profile and the margin profile of the company significantly. JJ says, is Tesla a buy at today's present valuation? You want to take that
JJ,
one?
you got some thinking to do. I don't know. I can't answer that. You got to be a big boy.
Yep. Jack says, if you get a chance, watch the episode of Jay Leno's Garage where he had Elon and his Tesla on it. Yeah, I saw the one that he did with the
I love that
Cybertruck. I'm interested. All right, so Gally, if people are interested in following you, what's the best way for them to connect with you and see your content?
Yeah, so you can follow me. My YouTube channel is called Hyperchange, youtube.com/HyperchangeTV. Just Google Hyperchange, one word. You'll find me. And yeah, would love to have people join the discussion. I'm all about just the community, moving the discussion forward, talking about tech companies change the world just like Tesla. I mean, just basically doing what we did here. This was so much fun. So thank you so much for having me, Brian. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. I think you can tell why Gally has a big following. His enthusiasm for this stuff is infectious.
I'm pumped. Let's go. The green revolution, bro. This is good news. It's battery day. Like, the world's changing. Like, I really think this is bright news that should make everybody happy. So
totally. Gally, thank you so much for coming on Fool Live, and we will be in touch soon.
Definitely. See you, Ryan. Have a good one.
All right.
Peace.
Cheers, Gally.